best. Teach a system, I invest. Never hidden, I ain't scared. Ain't no chicken, I take dares. I'll be winning, you get back what you're giving. Find the reason that you're living, what you're good at, all your gifts and what you love. Take a risk and find out what you've been missing. Yeah. Real life deep way under the surface, and like a fire needs coal in the furnace. This is your goal that makes it all worth it. This is your why that gives you your purpose. Real life deep way under the surface, and like a fire needs coal in the furnace. This is your goal that makes it all worth it. This is your why that gives you your purpose. Purpose is better than any drug you could ever think. If you know why you're doing something, that's all you need. I wake up ready for the day because I believe in everything that I'm doing like it was meant to be. I get fixated and captivated on learning things. Don't hesitate to ask questions, the answer that I need. It's out there somewhere, I swear I can find the recipe. By testing, learning, and turning into a better me. Lies deep way under the surface, and like a fire needs coal in the furnace. This is your goal that makes it all worth it. This is your why that gives you your purpose. Lies deep way under the surface, and like a fire needs coal in the furnace. This is your goal that makes it all worth it. This is your why that gives you your purpose. Feel low, you can still go. Even when you feel slow, you can still go. Even when there's no hope, you can still go. I never answer to no, man, I still go. Go, 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 yo, go, go, go. Hustle hard, hustle every single day. I'll be making moves till I'm buried in my grave. To the system, I don't wanna be a slave. I've been doing shit my way, or the highway. And in the driveway is a nice range. Cause I grind through the climb, I invite pain. You'll never hear me, bitch, nah, I don't complain. Just gotta flip the switch and you can go and obtain anything you want, anything you need. Your mind's got the key ingredient, it's belief. They deceive with the negativity, but I just slide right by that energy. Even when you feel low, you can still go. Even when you feel slow, you can still go. Even when there's no hope, you can still go. I never answer to no, man, I still go.
All right. Happy Tuesday, or I always say Tuesday, Monday, everyone. I am here by myself. I did throw up our friend Cal, though, because I couldn't be here without him. It just felt too weird. So I wanted to throw him on here. Just grabbed a screenshot from one of our other pods. I hope he's watching. I asked him to try and watch if he could, just to see how well it went. So we'll see if he says anything. But yeah, happy Monday, guys. Welcome. As I believe I mentioned in the Discord, Cal is probably 3, 4, 5 drinks deep right now on a vacation, enjoying himself. So hope he's having a good time. But the show goes on. So I'm just going to do our normal kind of rundown like we do every week. We'll go through some power rankings, standings type stuff. Cal did go through and kind of we did our normal sort of pre-pod stuff. So I do have notes from him that I'll talk about as well, kind of hit on a few as we go through. And then, yeah, we'll talk about some transaction stuff I wanted to then sort of mention when we talk about our preview for next week, just kind of hit on divisions and scheduling and all that kind of stuff. It's something Cal and I personally have talked about just in general, but I know it's been brought up in the chat as well. So I figured it was a interesting time to maybe talk about divisions and scheduling and kind of how that happens and what maybe it might look like moving forward if we change it at all. So with that being said, I'm gonna move into this year. I don't have Cal on this screen, unfortunately, but that is okay. So this is our power rankings for the week. Just wanted to hit on this really quick. But essentially, really for the first time, I think the split between the Nationals and Phillies is actually significant enough to mention. We've kind of talked about both of them in conjunction, I feel like, the past few weeks. Now the Nationals have kind of a 20-point lead in that power ranking score, which is significant, even though both of them have 20. And we'll talk about these two a little bit more later on in the pod as well. Looking down, just a couple of notes again that both Cal and I looked at. The Mets, I thought was kind of an interesting team to look at. We've talked about them as a team in the past who maybe has had some bad luck this year, and yet they're still a top 10 team according to the power rankings. However, I believe Matt put out a dump proclamation, and they also only have 10 wins. If you're looking at all the other teams kind of up here, everyone else is, really in the top 10 at least. Guardians are the closest, and they have 2 wins on them. So, just kind of interesting thing to look out there. Apparently a top 10 team according to power rankings, but are dumping and potentially, on the maybe outside looking into the NL race. I haven't looked that closely at it, but they're maybe close. Maybe they're one of the last spots in. Second one, Kansas City, kind of on the opposite end of things. Maybe been a little more lucky. They're a 15-win team. And are all the way outside of the top 10, which I think is a little interesting as well. Sitting around the Yankees 11-win team, Athletics 12-win team. So interesting to see a 15-win team down there outside of the top 10. Again, maybe Brennan's got a little bit lucky with some weeks, but we'll see. Obviously continues to win games. So certainly enough said about that. And then lastly, I just wanted to mention Joe's Dodgers. Certainly not where we're accustomed to seeing them. Sitting at number 18 currently in the danger zone of falling into the bottom third of the league. We'll see what he does. Obviously, he's only sitting at 8 wins right now. My assumption is I think he said multiple times that he was planning on dumping, probably trying to move some guys. So maybe he does fall lower than that, but that remains to be seen. On to Cal's points. Most of what he talked about was more standings related. Out in the NL West, he talked about the Rockies. Took a 3-0 week last week. Haven't heard from Allen necessarily on what his plans are. Obviously, he's in a weaker division. We've talked about how we feel like his team is still, a pretty decent team. We're assuming he's still probably going to dump to some degree, but, potentially he could also add a piece or two and maybe turn things around, maybe win a division that's a little weaker. I'm not sure what his plans are yet, so we'll have to wait and see on that. Yankees, in a similar type of situation in the AL East, they go 3-0, but that 3-0 vaulted them into first place over Tampa. So they're now the only above 500 team in the AL East. They got a 1-game lead over Tampa now, so that'll be interesting to kind of watch those two, see how they go back and forth. And then lastly, in the NL East, talking about the Braves, which is interesting. We've essentially almost exclusively talked about the Nationals, Phillies, and Mets in this division. I think we may have mentioned Frank and the Marlins a little bit. We have not talked about the Braves really at all. But they had a pretty big week this past week. They are kind of making a push in the NL, just looking, a 13-8 record. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so 6 teams. So that, they'll be right in it, kind of at the end. with I'm assuming with maybe the Mets and Brewers, possibly Marlins. We'll see. There'll be a few teams down there, but Braves making a push in a really tough division, sitting 13-8, certainly not bad. Could put themselves in a decent spot moving into the playoffs. So interesting to look at. One other thing I mentioned as well, when Cal had mentioned the Braves to me and making their playoff push, they're actually sitting at number 6 in the power rankings. I feel like we haven't talked about them at all ever this season in the power rankings, which I think is really kind of surprising since they're sitting at 6th now. I know Dylan is still trying to work out some of the kinks with the weekly up and down shifts. So I don't know exactly where they've been prior to this, but I mean, 13-win team sitting almost in the top 5 is kind of crazy to me. And I was actually going to look just who he's got on his roster too. Let's go year to date here. So I mean, hitting lineup not bad by any means, right? I mean, it's not the greatest in the world, but certainly not bad. He's got a few guys in here. I mean, Seager getting injured too. That certainly will be a boon when he comes back. Pitching wise, Ryan we'd love to see him get the Cy Young this year. He's having a great year. So I mean, pitching wise, it's okay. Not great, but okay. Not really anything down here. I mean, maybe Manea gives him something, but so I mean, a decent team, right? I mean, certainly I think a playoff team. But the fact they're sitting at number 6 in the power rankings is pretty crazy. And yeah, Kevin, to your point about them being the biggest surprise potentially, given where they were last year, I agree. In terms of, I would say, biggest surprise going from like bottom to top, for sure. I don't necessarily think, like, I think of Zach's Brewers as well. Maybe not as much of a surprise because Zach always has at least halfway decent team. So yeah, the fact that the Braves are as high as they are, the only other, and I don't know if it's as much of a surprise, but seeing Joe and the Dodgers that low, I think is a little surprising. Maybe Steve too with Baltimore. Guys we usually don't see near the bottom. But again, there's always going to be flux, right? Things changing. But yeah, I wouldn't disagree with you. I think the Braves being potentially the biggest surprise of the year is not a stretch by any means. With that being said, that is it for power rankings, standings, that kind of stuff. Now let's move to transactions. And Cal actually had a few that he wanted to talk about. The first being the TJ Nichols pickup. Where is he? He might have been second page. Yeah, there he is. Yeah, the Astros picked him up for 2. And this kind of goes with one of Cal's other points that he thought was kind of interesting is we've had over this past week, we had multiple prospect pickups that were over $1, with Nichols being one of them. And he Cal noted he loves Nichols, thinks he's a stud kind of guy. So it's very kind of interesting to just kind of look back. There's been a good amount of shuffling and movement. I don't know how much of that coincides with the release of some updated prospect lists. I know there's certainly a good portion of the league that likes to rely on those. We're also, little about a month and a half into the season, so we've gotten a good amount of data on guys as well. So that could be something that's causing people to pick, some more prospects up. But just kind of something interesting that we noted. His other note was Antonacci. He actually messaged me when I picked him up. Sam's been playing really well in the minors recently. I personally loved that he was 6 foot. If I can get a second base shortstop prospect who's sitting at 6 foot, potentially staying at those positions, I like that outlook, especially with Antonacci's profile. I think he could potentially get called up. Maybe not, I don't know, maybe end of the year for the White Sox. Potentially, he's still a little ways away, I think, though. He'll probably be sometime next year, potentially, for them, considering how much help they need. And then my one, let's see, is it on this page? Yeah, my one interesting pickup was just DJL. Coming back from injury, was not someone who was picked up in the redraft, which was a little interesting given that most people knew he was going to come back. But a huge pickup, I think, for Greg. I've been seeing, at least in ACL, there's been a lot of people who have been in need of a first baseman. And so the fact that DJ is first, second, and third eligible, I think is a good pickup. And I think he's played every day, almost every day since he's come back. So who knows? I mean, he's potent lineup. Certainly can't hurt. Spending $5 on him, I guess we'll see if the return could be there potentially, but certainly better than some other guys that are picked up. But we'll have to wait and see there. So interesting. Obviously, no real noteworthy trades coming up on the dump date here in a couple weeks. I mentioned this in my Discord messages as well, but we'll be next week most likely focusing on some kind of dump related topic, I would imagine. Maybe making some predictions or something like that. And then the week after, we'll have our dump date reaction, I guess, podcast, if you want to call it that. So be on the lookout for that over the next couple of weeks. And then Cal will have a tier list to go along with that as well, which will be fun. So that is it for transactions. So let's move on to the preview for next week. Go to the head-to-head schedule here. It's going to be, as I'm sure you guys can probably imagine, it's going to be a little bit shorter this week because I don't have a whole lot of back and forth to go with Cal here. So it'll be a little bit shorter this week, but that's all right. We can celebrate Cal when he gets back next week. All right, so this week I'll talk about kind of our matchups first, and then I'll talk about some decisions and scheduling stuff that Cal and I both have kind of talked about, and then just honestly my kind of opinions on divisions and scheduling as well. So for this week, I had noted looking at the San Francisco matchups and the Padres matchups just because they're a game apart in the NL West. So the Giants play, I think they're kind of spread out. Yeah, the Giants have to play the Cardinals, the Cubs, and the Brewers. So an NL Central showdown kind of week for the Giants. Certainly three tough matchups that they are not favored to win. So staring down an 0-3 week for Rourke. And the Padres, on the other hand, they have and I think they're kind of spread out a little bit as well. They're right here. Have Boston, Toronto, and the A's. So certainly three winnable games. So Greg has an opportunity, which I know Greg hasn't necessarily been in the conversation for winning the NL West ever. I don't think. Maybe there was a year where he was in contention for it. Not 100% sure. But yeah, very interesting week for him. Certainly could come out of that 3-0, which would put him, because I think he's the one down a game to O'Rourke right now. So I think that would put him up 2 games. So certainly a big week for those two. And then some bigger matchups. The Cubs and Royals. I still consider Brendan. I mean, you got 15 wins. I still consider him a top 10 team. So 2 top 10 teams going at it. And then Philly and Atlanta. I think obviously I just talked about how good Atlanta is. Number 2 versus number 6 in the rankings. That'll be a big one. The other matchup, just kind of moving into Cal's stuff, his big matchup is the Phillies get to play the Nationals this week, which I know Adams talked about before, how he hasn't played a ton of division opponents yet. This week, he gets 2 of them. So it'll be really interesting to see how that matchup goes. I didn't look at what the probable starters looks like, if anyone's getting a good 2-start week from anyone specific, but heavyweight matchup. So should be fun. And then, I mean, again, even Phillies and Braves is going to be a good one to watch. And then also he mentioned Duke and the Pirates having pretty much a cakewalk of a week. I appreciate him pointing this out, considering I'm one of the teams he's playing. But he's got Baltimore, Minnesota, and Boston, 3 teams really in the bottom 5, 6-ish of the league. So yeah, should be a pretty easy 3-0 week for Duke, I would say, unless something crazy kind of happens. So that's kind of it for the schedule. So the last thing, again, that I just mentioned to just kind of talk about is and again, Cal and I have talked about this a little bit, not necessarily to great length in any way, shape, or form, but divisions and scheduling. And I think this is something that we'll certainly talk about, going into the offseason, maybe during the offseason. but trying to make it where divisions matter more in terms of matchups, right? And I think it'll be an interesting conversation because I believe the reason we haven't had a set schedule before, the main reason is because it is an absolute pain in the ass to try to do it manually in Fantrax. There's just no good way to do it, which sucks. But I know people have volunteered their time, myself included, to make a schedule that is more division heavy. The interesting part would be, though, does everyone agree with that? Is everyone on board with making it where we play, our division mates at least twice a year, or 3 times a year, or whatever it might be? I don't know the exact. Let's say I guess there's 20 weeks, 3 games a week, so you're looking at 60 a week, or 60 matchups a year. So if I guess maybe at least 40 of those matchups, right, are in your division, or not 40, that'd be way too many. Maybe half of them, 30, are within your division. That could be kind of cool. Even less than that, I guess, if you wanted to play everyone 2 times, it'd obviously only be 8 matchups. You wanted to play 3 times, it'd be 12 matchups. But getting more than that would be kind of fun, right? Make divisions more important. Hard part about that is the more games you put into the division, if you're especially this year, you look at the divisions this year. Zach maybe doesn't have the record he has if he's playing Duke and Jeff and Frank every week, right? So are the teams that are supposed to be the best actually going to make the playoffs? So I don't know what the right number is. I'm not sure where we would potentially land on that as a league. Because, again, I know Duke's been very adamant against having to do the work to make it happen. But if we can maybe come up with an actual process where it's not only easy to create, but it also makes sense just from a numbers standpoint, I think, maybe we can convince him to do it, especially if he doesn't have to do it himself. That could be a possibility as well. So we'll see. Just something to kind of bring up there, something I wanted to touch on. I would love to play, even though I'm in a super tough division, I'd love to play my AL Central foes more, at least more regularly than I do. Even if it was you have 1 division game a week type of thing, right? Like it's a guaranteed minimum at least 1 a week, just to keep those rivalries kind of going week to week over the course of a season. I think that'd be a good thing. I'm not sure if that's something that the whole league wants. That would have to be certainly a discussion. My assumption would be that if it was something that Duke wanted to even consider, it would be something that he would put up to the rest of the league as well. So we'd have to just kind of wait and see what he thinks. But who knows? It may be something we'll talk about over the offseason, but just something I wanted to throw out there because I think it's a cool idea, something that could make the league even better, certainly than it already is. But with that being said, that is all I have. Hope everyone enjoyed it. I know it's not as fun when we're going back and forth, but we obviously wanted to keep it going and give you guys something to at least listen to for this week and maybe something to think on or talk about. So we'll be back next week. Again, dump date predictions. I don't know. Maybe we'll come up with something cool. Maybe we'll just literally talk about the dump for 30 minutes. I don't know. But should be a fun time. So we'll look forward to seeing you all next week. Appreciate you all listening as always, and have a great rest of the night and great rest of the week. We'll talk to y'all later. Peace.
Your will lies deep way under the surface, and like a fire needs coal in the furnace. This is your goal that makes it all worth it. This is your why that gives you your purpose. Let's go. Thoughts can keep you down, pushing deep until you drown, or they can keep you up strong, focused on the now. Glass half full, or has it been emptied out? Well, that's all up to you and your mind. Do you doubt anything, everything, not a thing? Make my thoughts work for me, manifest what I need, what I want, what I see. I could be anything, I attract all the things that I see. I believe I'll achieve as I breathe in and out again and again. I don't doubt, I sit and I plan and I found out that I can execute. If I'm driven, if I listen, if I learn all the wisdom, read some books, something written, watch the best. Teach a system, I invest. Never hidden, I ain't scared. Ain't no chicken, I take dash. I'll be winning, you get back what you're giving. Find the reason that you're living, what you're good at, all your gifts and what you love. Take a risk and find out what you've been missing now. Little lies deep way under the surface, and like a fire needs coal in the furnace. This is your goal that makes it all worth it. This is your why that gives you your purpose.